Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today Smoky Buttons in the Tier 7 German battlecruiser, the Prinz Heinrich, is going to be having a game of, well, ups and downs. Mostly downs, but let's take a look at the good news and the bad news. So first, the good news, he is top tier. This is a Tier 7 battle. The bad news, there is a carrier in play. The good news, the carrier is only Tier 6. The bad news, since when has that ever made a difference? The good news? No, that's pretty much it. Well, he's in a Prinz Heinrich. I mean, it's a good ship. But there's plenty more bad news. It's a standard battle rather than domination, and standard battles kind of suck. There are only 3 cruisers per side for him to feast on as a battleship player. There are 2 destroyers, and there are also 2 submarines. Other than that, though, it's all good. So anyway, while we wait for things to warm up, let's have a quick chat about the ship that he's sailing, the Prinz Heinrich. Like I said, it's a pretty good ship, although it's unusual amongst battlecruisers, in that most battlecruisers sacrifice armour and protection for speed and manoeuvrability. That's why they're battlecruisers and not battleships, but the Prinz Heinrich doesn't really do that. It's not slow, but it's definitely no speed demon either, and it does feature some pretty strong protection. I think its armour belt is something like 270mm thick. The bows and stern, of course, are only 25mm because it's a Tier 7 battlecruiser, not Tier 8, and that's always been a problem for Tier 7 battleships, and by extension battlecruisers like the Prinz Heinrich, because it means the bows and sterns can be overmatched by guns of 15-inch or 380mm or higher, and there are plenty of those guns around in a Tier 7 battle. However, it's not all terrible news, because the lower section of the bows does have a 70mm armour strip, which will help against overmatch from the front. A citadel roof is also 60mm thick, which basically means you should avoid getting shot at by ships that have 406mm or 16-inch guns or higher, like for example the Nagato on the enemy team. But that 60mm citadel roof combined with the 270mm of belt armour, if angled, means that you're basically citadel proof from almost all of the guns that are going to be shooting back at you. Particularly when you're top tier, as Smoky Buttons is here. Also, the deck of the ship is covered in 50mm of armour plating, which makes this ship surprisingly resistant to high explosive fire as well. The ship also has good secondaries, and is armed with surprising 10km range torpedoes rather than the standard 6km torpedoes that most German capital ships tend to have, if they have torpedoes at all, and 8 15-inch guns, the rear turret of which can traverse a full 360 degrees. The problem with the guns is, I mean, they're relatively accurate. They tend to get cruiser dispersion, but they have kind of bad sigma, which can lead to inconsistent main battery gunfire. The range of the guns isn't great either. Stock, I think the fire control system that the Prinz Heinrich comes with allows you to fire out to a range of only 15.8 kilometers, although that can be upgraded to 17 and something, but it's still not fantastic. The thing is, all of these factors combine the relatively short range, but powerful and reasonably accurate guns, the good secondaries, the torpedoes, the surprisingly tough armour, means that the Prinz Heinrich is a battlecruiser that's actually pretty good at brawling. Anyway, back to the battle. Right now there are 2 ships in this battle that are competing directly against each other, and yes, the Kite over there is one of them, to see who can be the first one to die. The other candidate being the enemy Texas over there. Honestly, looking at the Kite position, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, Netherlands, I think he's probably going to win, but the Texas has given him a good run for his money. Now the Texas is not a bad ship, but it is only Tier 5. And Smoky Buttons is giving him way too much broadside there and is not angled nearly enough. And the Texas is going to take advantage of that by inflicting an early 20,000 damage on him. Sadly for the Texas, he is not going to achieve his ambition of being the first one to die. The Cloggy has already beaten him to that, but despite his best efforts pushing straight into 2 Tier 7 battle cruisers, a carrier, a Minsk and a submarine, he's not even going to manage to come second. The enemy Marblehead has already taken that prize, but he does manage to achieve a creditable third, as the enemy Ranger puts the friendly Queen Elizabeth into 4th place. So, some boneheaded plays already on display in this Tier 7 standard battle on the Trident map. But wait, we are just getting started. There is a Leander on the other side of the island, and he sees a big fat stupid battlecruiser coming, so he launches the torpedoes, half of which hit the island. Because of course they do. We'll come back to the Leander in a moment. For now... Oh look, there's a Trento over there, one of those Italian heavy cruisers. The Trento is actually reasonably well armoured for cruisers. It has 25mm of plating, which can bounce 14-inch armour-piercing shells, but not 15-inch armour-piercing shells. We'll come back to the Trento in a moment. The Leander's popped up again, and surely the only reason the Leander is still here, given a flat broadside at that kind of range, is to get the torpedoes away from the other side. Anticipating this, Smoky Buttons is already turning in, but there are no torpedoes. I mean, okay, I know the Leander's guns are short range, but they're not that short range, and I don't think the smoke's going to save you at this stage. And in fact it didn't. Speaking of smoke not saving you, the Trento did the right thing. After getting bitch slapped by Smoky Button's 15-inch guns, he popped his high-speed smoke, but then he did the wrong thing by immediately firing his guns. And the reason firing his guns was the wrong thing is because the smoke firing penalty exists. Now, if you're in a destroyer, or even a light cruiser like the Leander, firing your guns from the concealment of the smoke screen, as long as the target you were shooting at wasn't closer than 3.5 to 4 kilometers away, you'd probably be perfectly fine. But he is not a destroyer or light cruiser. He's a heavy cruiser with dirty great big 8-inch guns, so the second he fired, he got spotted, and now he's dead too. So, some colossally dumb decisions being made over on this side of the map by the enemy team, but judging by the fact that the scores are actually even, with both teams down 4 ships, I think it's fairly safe to say that while we haven't actually been personally witnessing them, there have also been some colossally dumb decisions being made by Smoky Button's team elsewhere. Next, we're about to see something that is also colossally dumb, but isn't really anybody's fault other than wargaming, and I'm not talking about the T-22 over there. I'm talking about the enemy submarine that's just a couple of kilometers away off Smoky Buttons' flank and has just pinged him. Note that Smoky Buttons' hydro is running, and yet despite that, he still cannot see the submarine that's 3 kilometers away on his starboard flank at periscope depth and has just launched a torpedo into him. That's right, welcome to World of Warships, the naval warfare game where the thing that was specifically invented to detect submarines, sonar, doesn't detect submarines, even if the submarines are close enough to throw rocks at you. Wargaming? I am pretty sure, and as a 22-year Navy veteran, I believe I speak with some authority on this matter, that sonar doesn't work the way you seem to think it does. I think I can safely speak without too much fear of contradiction that this is just pants on head stupid. The only reason he sees the submarine, who is comfortably inside his sonar range, which is still running, is because the submarine was forced to surface. Oh well, fair enough. Also, aren't those torpedoes supposed to be homing? I mean, wargaming. I don't think homing torpedoes work the way you seem to think they do either. But you know, whatever. I'm not going to complain. Can we get a... Yes, there it is. Close quarters expert and the Kraken Unleashed. Scratch 1 sub. And his sonar's on cooldown. Not that it made the slightest bit of difference in detecting and killing that submarine. Anyway, I don't know, it's amazing. I mean, hydro always used to be the one consumable that was always going to be useful. Unlike defensive anti-aircraft fire, which isn't even useful when it's useful, you could always rely on your hydro to get shit done. And then Wargaming introduced submarines and said, oh, hang on a second, there's a consumable in the game that was specifically designed to defeat submarines. Don't worry, we can fix that. Honestly, you couldn't make this shit up. Speaking of which, what the hell is the Scharnhorst doing? Just when you thought you'd seen every boneheaded play in the game, the Scharnhorst says, hold my schnitzel. Now the Scharnhorst is also a tier 7 battleship, battle cruiser, the jury's out. Which means it also has that 25mm of plating that can be overmatched by 380mm guns, such as the ones featured on Smoky Button's Prinz Heinrich and also the Prinz Heinrich just off to his flank. The thing is, the Scharnhorst does not have 380mm guns, it only has 283mm guns, which cannot overmatch 25mm of plating. Honestly, the only reason that Scharnhorst is still alive is because Smoky Buttons hasn't loaded armor piercing. I mean, he was even gracious enough to come in showing flat broadside from one side and then turn around and now he's showing flat broadside from the other side. While sailing into a crossfire between two Prince Heinrichs, the other one of which took the kill. Look at this. That's the Kraken Unleashed in 5 kills. He's only done 71,000 damage. I'm feeling a vague sense of deja vu here. Didn't we have something like that in an Annapolis game not too long ago? Oh wait, no, that was the Shaw's battle in the That's Not a Lot of Damage video. Well, here we go again. Okay, that's bad news. Nagato is armed with 16-inch guns, and 16-inch guns are things that you really want to avoid getting shot at by when you're sailing the Prinz Heinrich. The Mackensen up ahead, however, is something that you really don't mind getting shot at by much when you're in the Prinz Heinrich, because even though the Mackensen at Tier 6 is the ship from which the Prinz Heinrich was developed, it only has 350mm guns, or 14-inch, rather than the 15-inch guns that the Prinz Heinrich enjoys, which means that the Mackensen cannot overmatch the 25mm bows, which is why he's keeping his bows pointed towards the Mackensen, and he's angling his 270mm armour belt against the 16-inch guns of the Nagato. The Nagato, which doesn't even have him targeted. The hell is the... Is he shooting at the other Prinz Heinrich? He is. The one that's on full health. He is, isn't he? Oh, what is going on in this battle? Honestly, I just don't get it. Yep. I mean, that wasn't exactly a paddling, but it was a pretty good bitch slapping. If only he'd held his fire, because now the Nagato is giving broadside to not one, but two Prinz Heinrichs. Probably, admittedly, in an effort to avoid those torpedoes. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, no, don't aim at the target that you might be able to kill. Aim at the one that you have least chance of killing. That'll work. Oh wait, no, it didn't. To be fair to the Nagato, I think what he was trying to do there was turn in and maybe ram Smoky Buttons while focusing his 16-inch guns on the other Prinz Heinrich, but it didn't work, did it? Meanwhile, in all the excitement, you can be forgiven for not noticing that Smoky Button's base is being capped out, but at least one other person on his team is capable of thinking and breathing at the same time. Unlike that enemy carrier, who is really just sitting there. Doesn't even have his engines running. But yes, the friendly Devonshire has gone back to defend the cap against what initially appeared just to be one of the enemy submarines, well, the only surviving enemy submarine, but who now also appears to have been joined by the surviving enemy destroyer, the Akatsuki, and the Devonshire has managed to conduct a successful depth charge attack on and sink the enemy sub, so good job to him. And he's also spotted the destroyer, who is probably just dumped torpedoes in the water, but is now also being forced out of the cap circle, just as, yeah, there is kill number 7. Although he has, you know, at least unlike in the Shaw's game that I featured last week, he has done a reasonable amount of damage for his 7 kills. Meanwhile, the Devonshire, up to the north, who has just succeeded in defending the cap circle after sinking the submarine and chasing the destroyer out of the cap circle, is once again proving that he's capable of thinking and breathing at the same time, because he is not attempting to chase down a vastly more stealthy destroyer and eat a whole bunch of torpedoes. He's turning away, his job is done, the cap has been defended, he's got nothing left to prove. I mean, it would be nice to get the last kill, but he's done his job. And he did get a kill on the submarine in the process, so that, in combination with his defender ribbons, means that he's not exactly doing it for nothing. Meanwhile, some, I'm going to call them optimistic torpedoes there from the Butsuki. They are never going to catch that Mackensen, unless he, you know, turns around and starts heading in this direction. I mean, Smoky Button's torpedoes, which have a 10-kilometre range, wouldn't even be able to catch a Mackensen sailing away, and I'm pretty sure that the Mackensen is not going to head back in this direction. I mean, he's getting pummeled by secondaries. He's clearly trying to get into cover behind the island up there. Unfortunately, the Devonshire Caught just a whiff of Akatsuki ankle there, turned in, and it looks like the Akatsuki suckered him into turning into his torpedoes because the Devonshire has gone down, which is a shame. But, I mean, it's a case of too little too late for the Akatsuki. Because Smoky Button's team, the other Prince Heinrich was in the cap circle, but he's abandoned it to come chasing after this Mackinson as well. The friendly submarine is staying there though because, well, capture points make prizes and he's too slow to catch up to the Mackinson. If the battle goes on long enough, he's probably going to be joined in the cap circle by the friendly carrier, who's dropping torpedoes on that Mackinson like his life depends on it. Speaking of dropping torpedoes as if your life depended on it, you can't quite see him, but you're about to see his torpedoes get launched as the Mutsuki, who tried to torpedo a battle cruiser sailing away from him at extreme range and predictably failed, and now tries it again. This time by trying to circle around the island, get ahead of him and close to suicide range to get those torpedoes away. And there's a reason why it's called suicide range, because the Mackinson killed him. But hey, at least he managed to get those torpedoes away. And from such close range that they couldn't possibly miss, right? How do you fuck that up? Can Smokey get kill number 8 before his team wins by capping out? No. Close, but no cigar. Honestly, the Mackinson put up a good fight, so I think he probably deserved to survive that one. But what the hell was going on in that battle? I mean, you see no shortage of bonehead plays when you're playing a game of World of Warships, but you rarely see them all in the same battle. Well, you did today. So congratulations on the wins, Smoky Buttons. 7 kills. Nothing to be ashamed of there. And thank you for an entertaining replay, because I really enjoyed that one. And hopefully you all did too, because that's it for today. As always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.